How's it going, everybody?
All right. We are live. Sorry, we're 5 minutes late, but better late than never, right?
Hopefully.
Welcome to our Facebook Live. My name is John Gardner. This is my wife and law partner, Radlin Mendoza, and we are the immigration law firm Gardner and Mendoza. We come to you every Monday night, well, almost every Monday night, to give you immigration updates, answer your immigration questions, and we do it on Facebook Live. And then we're also at the same time out here on TikTok. So hello to all the TikTok folks.
Hello to everyone.
Actually, we have a lot more
Hi,
people
Sandra.
come through on TikTok than we do on Facebook Live. So if you're on Facebook Live and get your question up, you'll probably get it answered easily. If you're joining us on TikTok, make sure
Hi,
you
Jose.
get your question posted super fast because the questions do line up and it's hard to get to all of them, and we take them just like USCIS, we take them in the order that they are received. So first in, first out.
That's right. That's right.
One thing I do want to warn you about is that what we do here is for immigration, it's for educational and informational purposes only. It is not legal advice. So please don't take anything that we say here and construe it as legal advice. It is not. If you're posting a question, I'm happy to try to give you some information about it, but we're not giving you legal advice about it because you're not our client. And it'd be impossible to give you sound legal advice with just a small snippet of a question. Once you become one of our clients, we do a deep dive into every detail. No stone goes unturned, and we make sure that we know everything before we move forward.
So long as you tell us everything.
Well, yeah, presuming that you tell us the truth and you're forthright.
I know they will.
Yeah, I know. Well, we've had surprises, and in the law, surprises are not good.
Absolutely not. So I'm getting kind of settled here. If you want to, I'm trying to share. If you want to just have a couple of announcements.
Yeah. What are you sharing? Well, I'll let you.
Well, no. I'm sharing to my personal Facebook page. It's not that exciting.
Okay.
I'm just getting it settled.
While Radlin is sharing to her personal Facebook page and getting settled, we were not here last Monday because we've actually had a very busy time since March 16th. So on March 16th, our whole office ran the Shamrock Marathon and Half Marathon, which is a race that's here in Virginia Beach. And we did a lot of training as a team, our whole law firm.
It was awesome.
Everyone participated and it was fantastic. We all ran, we finished it. It was really cool, but it took a lot of our time and effort. And of course, on Monday, we were pretty wiped out, to say the least. So
I wasn't tired at all.
That's the first thing.
John ran the marathon. That's why he was tired.
Yeah, I ran a marathon, and that's why I was tired. That's true. But a half marathon is a long one too, and I'm sure many people in our office were also pretty exhausted. But in any event, moving on from that, that's the one thing that we did.
Yes, we were very excited about that, to do that as a team.
3 days later, Radlin and I were receiving an award and presenting some awards at a very large function here in Virginia Beach, hosted by COVID Biz Magazine, where we had been named, or still are named.
Yes.
2 of the 150 most influential people in coastal Virginia.
Woohoo!
So thank you so much, COVID Biz Magazine, for that honor. That's really cool. So we received that honor, and then we also co-hosted the event and handed out some awards as well, presented some awards. It was a big function. It was a lot of work to put it on. And so we were, again, pretty tired from all of that. I
wasn't tired. John was tired. So this is our little brochure. We were we were presenting sponsors, and we got to present some of our favorite people in the community. And these were as John mentioned, the 150 most influential people in coastal Virginia. And our dear friend, Siri Lindley, who is a 2-time world champion triathlete and was #1 in the world. Thanks for the love. We invited her to speak at this event. There were over 300 people at this event, and we got to introduce her, and she just she wowed everyone, and there were
Crushed it.
also several honorees who spoke. Well, two of the honorees were the Dr. Bill and Kathy McGee, and they started Operation Small Together, and I had the honor of introducing them. So it was a fantastic night. We were asked to be the MCs. John and I have never done that before. We did not fall on our faces, and
Nope.
our friends and our loved ones said that we did a great job. So at least they think we did a
Yeah,
good job.
Absolutely.
Anyway, it was really awesome.
I mean, it wasn't a lot of comedy. It was a lot of corporations and law firms and so forth. So.
Yes. Anyway, okay.
It wasn't a slapstick night. It was a little more serious, but it was really great.
Yeah. But anyhow, we just wanted to celebrate that because we're really proud of our team for running with us in the half marathon, and John did the marathon, and also really proud of our law firm. And of course, we started the law firm 25 years ago and being named as one of the 150 most influential people in coastal Virginia. So, all right, enough bragging about ourselves.
Bragging.
Yes,
yeah. Social responsibility was the theme.
Yes.
I'll just brag a little bit more. It was really about highlighting the groups and individuals and corporations in this area who run wonderful companies, but also give back to the community and do great things. And we as well do a fair amount of pro bono work in our office, and we're proud that we are able to do that. So we're in a position that we can donate our time, our talent, and some of our money as well to help worthy causes. Of course, ours are immigration themed, but these folks all had different things that were near and dear to their hearts.
Yeah.
So now we're done bragging.
Okay. Giving back is good stuff.
Oh, wait. One last brag. Our 13-year-old ran a first half marathon.
Our 13-year-old ran a first half marathon, 2 hours and 24 minutes. Time doesn't matter about the time, but for a kid who didn't actually train at all and just went out there and ran it. Let's put it this way. She finished way before I did. Anyway.
Okay.
We have a couple of things tonight. Just guys, we are going to get to your questions, but this is just so very important. We cannot emphasize it enough.
Yeah, we already have a question on Facebook that's kind of tied to it, so you can see it's on everybody's mind.
Guys, look, and I'm talking primarily to the permanent residents here, but also to people who are visiting the United States, but primarily to the lawful permanent residents. You're a lawful permanent resident, and when we talk to people like lawful permanent residents, I like to say almost as good as it gets, right? You have the right to live and work in the United States. You can travel in and out of the United States pretty freely, so long as you're not staying outside for too long. But there are circumstances where you are going to be treated as a person who is seeking admission into the United States if you are a lawful permanent resident. And one of those is if you have a criminal record. If you have a criminal record, a conviction, an arrest, CBP, Customs and Border Protection, are taking a second look at everybody's criminal record history. You could have been exonerated, right? It doesn't even matter if you were convicted. But if you were convicted, guys, do not leave the United States. I don't care if you have traveled out of the United States as a permanent resident with this conviction, with this arrest, with whatever, 1,000 times. You're not going to do it this time, okay? Because people are getting stopped. People, lawful permanent residents, are getting stopped. They're getting detained. And they're taking a closer look at everyone's background. So in social media, and there was a story about it in Newsweek magazine, there is a Filipino woman who apparently was a permanent resident for 50 years. She went to high school here in the United States. And, on social media, there's the video, the family's confused about why Auntie was detained when she was coming back from the Philippines as a lawful permanent resident. So there's more here to the story, right? Because as an immigration lawyer, it's like, okay, that doesn't just happen, right? It just doesn't happen because you're you and that's it. So there was a comment that, Newsweek reported that she had an embezzlement conviction from 2001. And you guys are like, okay, that was 24 years ago. She's a permanent resident. She's been a permanent resident. She's been traveling in and out, all good. No, 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 absolutely not. And the table is shaking because I'm hitting the table.
This is important. Pay attention.
So if you have, an embezzlement is going to fall under something called a crime of moral turpitude. And John and I talked about this pretty early on in this administration when one of our clients, their daughter was detained at the airport, and she frankly could have been arrested and put in jail, right? Based on what's happening right now. So embezzlement, theft, shoplifting, can we name a few more? It's a crime of moral turpitude. All right. So if you have been convicted of a crime of moral turpitude as a lawful permanent resident and you're coming back into the United States, you may be inadmissible, which means you may not be eligible to come into the United States. So pre-Trump, maybe they'll let you in. Maybe they didn't dig too deep into your record. But it's a different day now, guys. It is a different day. And y'all need to be super careful if you have a criminal conviction, an arrest, anything, even if it went away, went away. And, we're seeing a handful of these cases popping up here and there. There was a German national who came in, and he's a permanent resident. He was detained. I looked further into the case. He has a controlled substance conviction and a DUI. DUI, no biggie. Controlled substance conviction, not good. No bueno. Not good. Not good. And so he's just coming back into the United States. He's a permanent resident. He's in detention right now. Filipino auntie, who's been permanent resident for 50 years, in detention right now. And other people, many more people. I don't know. It's just popping up here and there. It's not thousands of people. I mean, maybe it's going to be that, but you guys need to be aware of this. And I know that I'm, coming on strong here, but if you are a lawful permanent resident and you have anything that is questionable about your permanent residency, even how you got your permanent residency, you need to think twice about traveling. And if you have a conviction, you must talk to an immigration lawyer, talk to your immigration lawyer if you want to, and get a triple, quadruple check that, yes, you are fine to travel outside the United States with this, and it does not make you inadmissible. We have had these cases before. One of our clients, he had a marijuana conviction, and it started off as more serious charge. It got dropped down to simple possession of marijuana. And this is another situation where you're inadmissible. If you are trying to enter the United States, even as a lawful permanent resident with a drug conviction that is not less than 30 grams of marijuana. So please, please, please be careful. Take this very seriously. You don't want to end up like this, right? If you don't have to travel and you have concerns about your record, please think twice before traveling and consult with a professional about evaluating this, and consult with an immigration attorney. It could be us, if it's appropriate for you to file for U.S. citizenship. So interestingly, if Auntie had applied for U.S. citizenship, right? I looked it up. It's a class 4 felony in the state of Washington. It's embezzlement. Maybe she would have been eligible for citizenship because it may not have made her deportable because it's outside of the 5 years of good moral character, but it does make her inadmissible when she's coming back into the United States. And right now, they're detaining you. They're not paroling you in and saying, okay, well, bring those dot papers to me a little bit later. We'll just allow you to come in. We'll parole you in and we'll take a look at it later. That's what they did with our client. Our client was actually detained at his further inspection, and there was no bond for him because they thought it is more than 30 grams of marijuana. So guys, just please really be careful. And back to, this was shortly after Trump went into office. Our client's daughter, again, she had a shoplifting conviction, and they held her at the airport. They gave her a notice to appear in immigration court. They did let her go, but that could have been very different. Like this Filipino woman who is being held right now for her 2001 conviction of embezzlement. There's a real possibility she's not getting out because she doesn't fall under the petty offense exception,
Right.
From what I'm looking. Anyhow, so all right, that was the big thing that I wanted to say before we got into questions.
Just to recap, because it is a little bit confusing. There are some things that if you're not a U.S. citizen, there are things that can get you deported, kicked out of the country. Okay.
And you go through removal proceedings.
Through a process.
Right.
But there are other things that just prevent you from coming into the United States. And they're not always the same. Some of the things that can get you kicked out are not the same as the things that prevent you from coming in.
Right.
But if you're not a U.S. citizen, every time you leave and go somewhere, when you come back, you're knocking on the door again, saying, hey, I'm back. I'm a permanent resident. Let me in. And they're saying, okay, well, let's see. Are you admissible? And they're looking at all the different rules. And they say, oh, you've got this conviction in 2001. No, actually, you're not.
Yeah. And then you're going to be then classified as you're seeking admission.
You're right.
Like you have that. And it's not just crimes, right? It's, have you stayed outside of the United States for more than 180 days? Did you abandon your permanent residency? Did you commit some sort of crime while you were out on this trip? So just be really careful.
And just because you've traveled and came back in before, you might be thinking, well, I shouldn't be worried about it. I mean, after all, I've come into the US like 5 times and I always had that conviction. No one's ever said anything to me. They're looking more closely. They are really, really fine-tooth combing through this stuff right now. So.
And this is not, I'm going to say that it's not new, right? Like some of our clients are getting paroled in and they have an issue. They've got a problem with their permanent residency. It's not new that some people are getting put into deportation proceedings because of their past history. What is new is just the way that it's being done, where instead of getting paroled in, people are getting detained right at the port of entry. And so there's not even an opportunity to get your documents right, talk to your lawyer, bring a lawyer to the next thing. So just be really careful. We would hate for that happen to you or one of your family members or friends. All right. Everybody knows about knowing your rights. We're not going to do that again.
Let's put Jose.
Yes.
Let's put his up here because it goes together. Because Jose wanted to know, he said, my wife is a naturalized citizen. We have plans to fly to Mexico. Are they denying entry to naturalized citizens going back into the U.S.? And then he goes on to say she has a passport and passport card. So the answer is no, they're not denying. If you're a naturalized citizen, you have your U.S. passport, then you are not what we're talking about. You're in a very different category. You're a U.S. citizen. You can travel freely in and out of the United States all you want. You can go anywhere you want. You can stay out for as long as you want and still come back in. If you have a criminal conviction in your past, doesn't matter. You're a citizen now. Okay.
Yeah. And hopefully, I mean, your wife is not a person of interest or someone who has been protesting against the U.S. government. Well, not the U.S. government, but protesting, and then the government deems that to be, falling into terrorist activities or things of that nature. What I'm trying to get at is basically, a naturalized U.S. citizen, right? If you're a person who, who could fall in this category, is there a possibility they go into your immigration record to see whether you dotted the I's and crossed all of T's? Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, Jose, I'm sure your wife does not fall into that category. I'm just saying that, could happen.
Yeah.
But it's a great question.
Yeah. We don't want to scare anybody. I mean, that's not happening. I just want to make sure that we're all clear that naturalized citizens are not being detained right now. So she should be fine.
Yeah.
But Radlin is pointing out that it's not impossible. If there's something really odd in her past, like that about, then you might want to be concerned.
Well, I mean, it's not even that, right? Because only she would know if it was something odd in her past. If she's being extremely public, vocal, that's what I'm talking about.
Right. That's not going to get her stopped. You can go out and get a megaphone and speak all you want. Your First Amendment rights are protected. So I wouldn't worry about that. I'd be more worried about maybe, if there was some fraud that was involved in getting your green card, which ultimately led to your citizenship or something along those
which
lines.
I'm saying could lead to the investigation of that, that sort of thing. So, all right. But great question.
Yes, great question.
Let's grab a question from TikTok.
All right. Irizo79 wants to know, can I marry someone to stay in the country? We are in love. No, Irizo79, you cannot marry someone to stay in the country. As a matter of fact, you can marry someone for any other reason and every other reason except for that one reason. So,
right. So
if the reason you're getting married is to stay in the country, then that's a problem. If you're getting married for any other reason, it doesn't have to be love, it could be anything, then you're good.
What's the name? I can't see.
Irizo79.
Okay, let's lead with the love part. Let's lead with the we are in love part.
Yes.
I want to get married.
Yeah.
Right? I want my significant other to be with me here in the United States for the rest of my life. Yes, you can get married to someone, and if you are a U.S. citizen, and if that person entered the United States with inspection, meaning they came in with a tourist visa, an F1, a student visa, an H-1B, any other type of visa, they were inspected and admitted into the United States by Customs and Border Protection, and their intent was to visit or whatever, you all fell in love, you got married. Yes, it is possible to do adjustment of status where your spouse could get a green card because of your marriage. Again, those are very specific facts. Okay. So if your beloved entered the United States without inspection, right? Let's say they crossed the border. Can you get married? And will your spouse be able to stay in the United States? Yes, but there's another process that is extremely lengthy. It's called the provisional waiver. If your spouse qualifies for the provisional waiver, and it would allow your spouse to ultimately get permanent residency, but it's about a 6-year process. It requires your spouse to go back to their country ultimately to get their immigrant visa and then come back here to the United States on that immigrant visa. It still can be done. We do a lot of provisional waiver cases, and but they have just been getting longer and longer. And that is really the issue with provisional waivers right now. But it is something, and whatever, if your spouse is undocumented and there's an opportunity to get married and they're not, we evaluate the case and we think, okay, she or he would be a good candidate for provisional waiver, they would be a good candidate for provisional waiver, then we would pursue it, even though it takes a really long time, because it is a pathway, guys. It is a legal pathway that you are seeking, and it's something. All right. Long answer to a question. What? All right, let's grab another question here. Ken says, Hi, good morning from Guam. Good morning. That's a beautiful photo.
Which
Wish
sure
I
is.
were on that. My I-130 for my spouse in Manila is still pending approval. I sent it March 7th, 2024. What would be my next step? It starts with a W, ends in a T. Unfortunately, you probably have to wait. So March 7th, 2024, that's about 12 months, 12 months that it has been pending. If you are a US citizen, then the I-130 petition is taking about 14 to 16 months for USCIS to approve the I-130 petition. Then it gets transferred to the National Visa Center, which the transfer takes about 30 to 60 days. National Visa Center, it's there for 3-4 months, depending on how quickly you can get documentarily qualified, how quickly you can upload those documents. And then you have to wait until a visa interview is available at the US Embassy in Manila, which of course is one of the most backlogged embassies in the world. So sadly, you have to wait even for that I-130 petition to be approved. Hopefully, if you are a US citizen, it gets approved fairly quickly in the next couple of months here. And then again, transfer, National Visa Center processing, interview. We're happy to help you with the next steps of your case if you would like assistance, and I recommend that you do. All right. Should we grab another question on TikTok?
Yeah, I was just double checking something. This is an interesting question. Kiki wants to know, a police report says that there was no weapon, but apparently Kiki was held to the floor while the robber took money from the register and wants to know whether this could potentially be a viable U visa. And I just wanted to confirm that a weapon is not a requirement necessarily.
Yeah. Yes, it's potentially a U visa. There's no harm in trying.
Right, no harm in trying, and there's
yeah.
no specific requirement that there be a weapon used.
Right. And so with the U visa, of course, you have to get the certification first from a prosecutor or from a police officer to show that you were helpful in the case. And you have to ask, right? We were able to get the certification for a crime that happened over a decade ago. And we were very surprised that it was certified. So you got to try.
Yeah,
There's no harm
absolutely.
in trying. I mean, it's money and time, but could be worth it. All right. Let's see
Now, the
here.
only thing I would say about no harm in trying is there are some immigration situations where there is harm in trying, and with that one, there's not.
Right. Well, exactly. That's true.
I do want to point out that if we had a totally different scenario, let's say you were deciding to naturalize and become a U.S. citizen, you would want to talk to an immigration lawyer before you make that first step, because you might have something in your past that is a sleeping dog that you don't want to have woken up, because we have seen that before. Folks that were permanent residents for many years, they go to naturalize, and then there's something comes out that's going to be a major problem, making them removable from the country. And so in those cases, a good immigration lawyer is going to advise them, just leave it alone. Don't do it.
Sleeping lion.
Sleeping. What's that?
I would say sleeping lion.
Not a
because that bite is going to be big.
Worse than a dog.
Yeah. All right. Jose says, thank you to both. She's understandably nervous. No protests or anything. Okay. And I'm not saying, guys, I'm not saying that you shouldn't go protest and go exercise your right to free speech. If you are a permanent resident, if you are on a student visa, if you are on an H-1B visa, I would be very careful.
Yeah.
I would be extremely careful. There are people who, just be careful. That's all I gotta say.
Right. I mean, it's a balance. I know everybody's nervous. I was just pointing out earlier. I don't want naturalized U.S. citizens to feel like they got to lay low. That's really not the country that we are. And so I'm hesitant to tell anyone to do that right
Yeah.
now. But
I mean, permanent residents shouldn't have to lay low either,
no, that's true.
but
But
you have to be careful
they're
right
in more
now.
of a danger zone.
Right now. All right. So, question here.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Harleen wants to know, what if my U.S. citizen spouse is in jail for a DUI? Can I go to my interview alone?
So this
Yeah.
is a really good question.
Yeah, I know. I knew we wanted to get to this one.
You may want to ask for a continuance of that. If you want to try to go to your interview alone, it is going to be up to the immigration officer whether they're going to interview you or not. So we live in a military town. So by the way, I'm Radlin Mendoza. This is my law partner and husband, John Gardner. We opened our law firm 25 years ago. It's called Gardner Mendoza. We're located in Virginia Beach, Virginia. We represent people all around the United States and all around the world. But here in Virginia Beach, where our brick and mortar office is, we represent a lot of people in the military. And when our clients are the petitioner is overseas, the office says we look at it on a case by case basis. Maybe we'll interview your client, maybe we won't. They typically will. Now this is a little bit different. Your spouse is obviously not in the military. The spouse is in jail for DUI. One thing you might want to think about doing is getting a statement from your spouse that they obviously they want to continue with the petition and their circumstances, just a statement that they're in prison or in jail for the DUI when they're going to get out, and that they're giving you permission to go on with this interview without you. You also may think about getting a power of attorney and taking that to the interview and see if they'll interview you. And of course, lots and lots of documentation of a bona fide marriage and relationship. So power of attorney signed by your husband in jail or wife in jail, and 2, a statement stating that they want to continue with the petition. Hopefully that helps.
All right, great
All
info.
right. Martha has the same question that we were talking about today, so I'm glad everybody's asking this question. This is the theme of the evening.
Yes,
is should
it
you
sure is.
travel outside of the United States as a permanent resident? Martha says, if we are only residents and want to travel out of the United States and then come back, will there be any problem? Now, this is the case where, we have a little bit of information, and I would ask a couple of questions. I would say, do you have any criminal record history? And when I say criminal record history, we don't just mean a conviction.
No.
We mean an arrest. We mean a stop, anything that could come up on your record that looks negative that hasn't been resolved. So that's the biggest one. The second one is, have you ever been outside of the United States for more than 180 days in the past? Because that can also come up. So when we're applying for U.S. citizenship for our client could have been out of the U.S. 7 years ago for more than 100 days, 80 days. It can still come up even though the application is only asking for the past 5 years. Well, let's just say 4 years ago, they were out for more than 180 days. That can still come up. And the question is why? Why were you outside of the United States for more than 180 days? Do you have any documentation to show that you did not abandon your green card? So that's a second question that I have. And then the third question that we would have is, how did you get your permanent residency? What were the circumstances? Did your children petition for you? Or, these are just the things that I would look into. One of our friends asked us if they should apply for U.S. citizenship. Like, hey, look, we need to sit down and go deep dive into what happened in your immigration case. We were not the attorneys. Should you apply for U.S. citizenship? I don't know. We look at every single thing, and we are being even more diligent now than ever because they're getting into it, and so we have to.
Yeah, and going back to these the criminal conviction, point, I want to really caution everyone about things that were ultimately dismissed. This is a real trap in immigration law.
Yeah.
a lot of like more minor crimes like a marijuana possession or, a domestic issue, there are all kinds of programs. Every state has a variation of it where, you go to court. Solicitation of prostitution is another one. You go to court and basically the judge says, look, we understand it was a bad night, not your finest moment, but not the crime of the century. Here's the deal. You do some community service, take this class, pay your fines and court costs. You come back a year from now, and as long as you don't have any new trouble, we'll dismiss the charge. And a lot of people enter into these deferred programs, and then they come back and the charge gets dismissed. That's great. Nothing wrong with that for state court purposes. It's diversion programs have a very important role in our criminal justice system. They're very effective, but that still counts as a conviction for immigration purposes. So you got to be really careful. If you're somebody who thinks your case was dismissed because you went through one of those programs, then you still have that criminal conviction as a problem for immigration purposes.
Yep.
So be super careful.
So a little bit about John and me is it in the first 15 years of our career, we did a lot of seminars for lawyers and judges and continuing legal education programs to discuss the immigration consequences of criminal convictions, which John was a criminal defense attorney for 20 years. So there's an art, right? To if you have a criminal charge and you're an immigrant, you're a lawful permanent resident, you're not yet a US citizen, you need to lawyer up.
Yep.
You need to get an immigration attorney to work with your criminal defense attorney to make sure that whatever you plead guilty to is not going to affect your immigration status, because theft is no biggie, right? It's a class 1 misdemeanor in most states, but it can be a problem.
Sure
if something falls under aggravated felony, for example, it's not aggravated felony is an immigration term, and that doesn't exist in criminal defense world. It's an immigration term, and you can get put into that category of aggravated felony for immigration purposes really quickly. So
yeah, and it's really tricky work, and you need a specialist to help you with it because not everything lines up. I mean, resisting arrest, not a problem. Obstruction of justice is a problem. Go figure.
Right.
And you have to figure out whether or not each state criminal statute, you have to see whether it has elements that are similar enough to a federal statute that's on point for it. It gets really confusing and complicated. And so, you really want to consult with somebody who knows what they're doing. As Radlin said, for many years, part of my defense practice really involved trying to thread the needle and find what we called a safe haven. The safe havens were plea agreements that would make the prosecutor happy, make the judge happy, and spare our client, an immigration problem down the road. So, we wanted to make sure when they left the courthouse that they were not just stepping into an immigration trap that was going to be popping up in a year or two down the road. So if you're in that situation, make sure you talk to somebody.
Yep.
All right.
Absolutely.
And we're talking a lot about this tonight because, well, we always talk about it a little bit, but it plays into this whole thing about the travel, because when you leave, we've got more Bulloy here on TikTok says, can I travel permanent resident even if no criminal record? Muna says, can I travel as a permanent resident internationally? This is the question of the moment.
Hour.
Everybody
right.
wants
Lorena
to know
says,
about
if
this.
you're a permanent resident with a green card born in Venezuela, your green card is current, what is the recommendation about traveling internationally for a couple of weeks and re-entering the United States? What did we tell our team? What did we tell our team on our meeting? We said, guys, look, if our clients who are permanent residents, and yes, clean record, clean everything, all good. If they don't have to travel right now, then don't travel, right? I mean, can you travel? Yes, you can travel. Rewatch this video if you didn't see with the things that we talked about, right? With these asking these questions. Should you? I don't know. I mean, it's something that we really it's a risk, right? Lorena says, I know we are very popular right now. It is true, right? I mean,
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you should play, the game of trying to figure out what countries, but we all know that some countries are going to be riskier than others. Venezuela is going to be higher on that list than if you were, traveling somewhere else. If you were traveling to Luxembourg, let's say, that's just a fact.
yeah.
So, that may play into your decision of whether or not you want to do it.
Yes. And again, guys, we're you have to make this decision on your own. If you don't have a criminal record history, you don't have any issues on how you got your green card, you have never been outside of the United States for more than 180 days, you're going for a short visit and coming back in, you're not going to bring anything back. You're not traveling outside the United States with more than $10,000. You're not coming back in with more than $10,000. You are, I mean, there's a list of things. There's just so many things. You're not coming back in with cigarettes. You are telling the truth every step of the way. Do you remember when you brought the food back in from the plane and the guy was just yelling at John because I asked you if you had any food. You said no. Oh my gosh, sorry. It's the banana and the crackers from the airplane.
Yeah, one of our daughters put a banana in my backpack.
So, what are we? It happens. You just guys have to be super careful. You have to make a judgment call. And I understand that if you have to travel and we're not trying to scare you. These are little pockets. They're just here that because we're all on social media. It seems like a lot, right? But there are a handful of cases right now. And let's just say that could have been avoided, but there's something there, right? There's the guy with the controlled substance in the DUI. There's the woman with the embezzlement charge. There are a couple of other things where parents, for example, like you're a US citizen child, you have petitioned for your parents, they're from the Philippines or they're from India, and they're spending so much time outside of the United States. They may be questioned about why they're spending so much time out of the United States, even if they're not going to be out for more than 180 days. But if they're like, oh, I'm going to be in the Philippines for 5 months, come to the United States for 1, go back to the Philippines for another 5.5 months, come back for 3, and they do this over a period of time, that's not going to fly. I mean, we've had clients, parents who have had their green cards, they've signed the I-47 to abandon their green card because they're getting questioned about all this travel back and forth. This has happened a couple of times in my career where people have lost their green cards because of the back and forth travel. So there's so many questions that you have to ask yourself. And if any of this is just kind of like makes your ears perk up, like, okay, maybe we should travel, then don't travel, right? Like trust your gut.
It's unsettling. Even if everything turns out fine, even if everything is going to be fine, it's a very unpleasant experience. I've been through it myself. Coming back from Colombia, and it's
there.
not pleasant at all.
Oh, that's right, because you got pulled out.
Yeah,
John got pulled out of the line, and all of us had to go with him. Had to go down with him.
And going back to going back to the question about Venezuela, we were coming back from Colombia, and that was the line of questions. He said, "What were you doing in Colombia?" So I remember he said, "So you're telling me you took your family to Colombia for a vacation, really?" So I have a feeling if we'd been coming back from France or Japan, there wouldn't have been any issue at all.
Yeah, right.
So,
and it was not super random, but from the officer's point of view, it was super random. But we went to Colombia and then we went to Ecuador.
Mhm.
Makes a lot of sense, right? We wanted to hit another country. It was beautiful, by the way. Cartagena,
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Oh, we had a wonderful time. Okay, let's see here.
So be careful with the traveling. It's a really great question.
Yep, green card. I've been a green card holder for a year already, and I'm planning to visit the Philippines for 2 weeks. Would there be any problem? Just
Run through it.
everyone, TikTok, Facebook, if you just watch this again from the beginning, because this is all we've been talking about.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, let me grab this question. Hello, Miss Deborah. Good to see you. Since the new administration, is there a deliberate delay on the processing of applications? Should we be concerned? What can immigration lawyers do for their cases in delayed cases? So there's, from what I can tell, there's not a deliberate delay. There's not, processing times haven't shot up. They're pretty much the same. Actually, naturalization processing times have gone down a little bit. As far as if there were additional delays, so let's just say the processing for an I-130 petition went from 14 and a half months, what it is now, to 28 months. Okay. Unfortunately, we cannot make any type of inquiries until the processing times and until USCIS goes over the processing times. But once the case has gone over the processing times, then we can make USCIS inquiries. We can ask for congressional liaison assistance, but we can't do it unless your case goes over the processing times, unfortunately. So just like you all, we have to wait until the posted, until the case goes over that posted processing times. Hopefully that answers your question. But I do not see, as of this very moment, any deliberate delays.
Yeah, in extreme situations, sometimes we had to file lawsuits, but that's when you get really far out there.
Yep.
Okay, and she says, or if you're coming back from Jamaica, yeah, exactly. That might be another place where you're coming. They might be a little more suspicious. Sorry to draw this connection, but whatever, it is what it is. Speaking of that, that reminds me, one other thing I wanted to mention is to be careful. Marijuana has become legal in some measure in almost all states to some degree. So that might make you think, oh, well, marijuana is not a problem. It is not legal under federal law yet. And so as long as that's the case, marijuana is still a problem for immigration. So if you're a permanent resident or you're on a visa of some sort, then you want to steer clear of the marijuana. Okay.
100%.
100%, my brother.
All right. Do you have a question here?
Kelton wants to know, I filed an adjustment of status for my humanitarian parole wife. Is she still protected?
Big sigh. So I don't know what the administration is going to do with the cases where somebody who was allowed in under humanitarian parole and now they're applying for adjustment of status. The administration has said that they are going to pull those types of cases and look at them and not necessarily approve them right away. Haven't heard any more about that. There's just a lot going on with immigration in particular, but just a lot of other things as well. The economy, and there's a lot. The administration, the focus has been, a lot of the news has been on on immigration, but there's a lot of other things that are happening as well that obviously the administration is trying to address and take care of. So I haven't heard, but I do have a colleague who had a denied adjustment of status, and their client was had humanitarian parole from Haiti, if that provides any. And we were talking about, okay, should this get refiled, or should we just lay low, or whatever? And I don't have the details of the denial, but my colleague said that there wasn't any real reason. So again, we have to wait and see on that one. All right. Nora says U visa was tried, but the police officer did not sign off anything. Was a witness of a crime, not a victim. Your law firm helped. Can you help in a different way? Nora, that we would have to take a look at, what's going on now with you as far as immigration is concerned. Has anything changed? And reevaluate your case, which we would of course be happy to do.
Yeah, and that's the really important first step in those cases is you do have to have the cooperation from the officers and the prosecutors.
Yep.
And if they conclude that you are just a witness, then yeah. We have more of these questions. Jessica wants to know, my husband is going to renew his permanent residency. Are they going to give him a new one? I mean, hopefully, presumably, if there's not something, if there hasn't been a change.
So if you go and renew your permanent residency, so there are two ways to do that. If you got your green card and you did it based on marriage to a U.S. citizen, then you are going to get, and you were married for 2 years when that first green card was approved, then you're going to get the 2-year conditional residence card, the 2-year card. And you have to, it's not a renewal, you have to remove the conditions on your permanent resident card. And you have to file what's called the I-751 to remove the conditions on that green card. That's one way, right? But it's not technically a renewal. And many people make the mistake of filing the I-90, which is the way to renew a green card when you're not a conditional resident. So is he going to get a green card? Hopefully he does. But make sure if you are looking to remove those conditions or quote unquote renew your 2-year green card, you're filing the right form. We just met with someone a couple today who filed the wrong form, and that's happened. That happens very frequently. There's a big warning on the I-90 the I-90 page says don't file this if you have a 2-year green card. So hopefully your husband does get his green card renewed.
Okay. Cookie says, I'm here on a K-1 visa and I went to see my aunt in California. I'm returning to Pennsylvania this week. Is it safe?
So it should be, your K-1 is valid for a short period of time. Of course, you have to get married within the 90 days of coming into the United States. Hopefully you have filed your green card application. If you haven't, then and you're still within that time period, you should be fine to travel. I would be cautious if you're traveling with an expired visa and an I-94 that is not current. So just be careful with that. With the K-1, it's different. You come into the United States on a K-1, you have to get married within the first 90 days. And typically you're going to go ahead and file the green card application, the I-45, the work authorization, the advanced parole. And then you'll get a receipt back, travel with that I-45 receipt if you have it.
Yeah, Cookie, traveling domestically is typically, we've been talking a lot about leaving the country and coming back in. If you're traveling around inside the United States, that's typically a much safer situation. I'm not saying there are no risks involved, but not the same risks as when you leave the country. When you leave the country, you really are taking a risk if you fall into one of the categories that we've been talking about.
Yeah. Oh, look, my dad is here. Hi, Dad. Hi, Kathy. Your mom's probably here too.
Hi, Mom, if you're here.
Okay.
Okay, it's 9 o'clock, so why don't we take that last, maybe a couple more questions. Murray wants to know if you know the processing time for citizenship.
It depends on your city and state. Here, it's right now. I've checked several cities and states. It's right around eight months. So file it It's usually shorter than that, which is good. Lisa, let me grab this really quickly. She says, I'm a permanent resident for over 40 years. Is it safe for me to travel to Cancun, Mexico for vacation? Again, if you've been watching, then you know that you need to go through a bunch of questions before asking, before traveling and making sure that you're safe to travel. If you weren't here when we discussed that, I would advise and recommend that you watch the video, the recording. And for all of those who are watching the re-recording, welcome.
That's right. Okay.
All right. I'm
out-
starting to slur my speech.
Yeah, we are out of time, folks. Thank you so much for
Yes,
joining
thank
us.
you guys so much.
I know everybody's a little bit nervous. Just, don't panic. Just be diligent in what you're doing and make sure you're being careful. And part of that involves consulting with experts, including us as immigration lawyers. And so if you have any questions, you should reach out to us. Our information has been here all night. It's 757-464-9224. Email is info@gmlaw.net. Okay.
Yes. And if you will do us a favor, like and follow. And if you think this will be helpful to any of your friends or family, please share the video, because I think it is really helpful information. And people just don't know. I mean, I had a consultation, and I'm not sure what's going on there. I had a consultation, and the wife said, well, I said, are you watching the news, or do you know what's going on with immigration? And husband is like, no, I have no idea. And it was a question about renewing, or not renewing, but applying for naturalization. And his wife said, I watch all the news, and that's why I made this appointment, because we want to just make sure that we're doing the right thing and going down the right path. So the news is a little bit scary. I hate watching the news, but I'm forcing myself to watch the news just because we want to make sure that we're on top of everything. And we are members of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, so they put out notifications, but we're on it, and we will be reporting back to you next week. Hopefully nothing crazy happens between now and then, but if anything does, we will report back to you.
All right, folks, we will see you next Monday.
2 thumbs up. Thank you so much.
2 thumbs up. Have a good
Bye,
night, everyone.
guys.
Take care.
Bye.